Hey everybody, welcome back to my shop. In today's video I'm going to be building this burial flag case, or some people call it a memorial flag case. In my case it's a burial flag case because some of you know that I lost my father this year, recently back in the summer. And my father was a sergeant in the Army from 1965 to 1967 during the times of Vietnam. And so the military presented my mother with this flag at the funeral. So it was time to make a nice case for it. Now sure, you can order a case like this for pretty cheap, but I wanted to use quality wood, and since I'm a woodworker and carpenter, this is what I do. It's more sentimental to build something like this. So I hope you guys get a lot out of the video. I can only hope that you never do have to build one, but in the event that you do, or maybe you have to build it for someone else or for a client, you get a lot of tips and tricks out of it. So the top has a 45-degree miter. The bottom angles are 67.5, so I'm going to show you how to cut those extreme angles with the table saw. I also have a video where I made a jig for it. If you haven't seen that video, go and check that out, and I show you some footage of how to do that on the miter saw also. Okay, so the front is comprised of a separate piece which I made purposely so that the glass is replaceable without having to put a hinge on like some people do. They actually mortise hinges into it and they have like a clip here. I didn't want to do that, so what I did was I made a separate front to house the glass and held it in with just pin nails so that it could be easily pried off to insert a new piece of glass in the event that it's broken. Also, to reinforce the miters, you can see, I don't know if the camera will pick that up from this far, but I put splines in there, and I'm going to show you an easy way to make those splines without having a special jig or anything like that. Okay, so let's get started on this build. First thing I want to do is put a quick and dirty straight edge on the board before I pass it through the rip fence to get it to what I'm going to rip down to 4.5 inches wide. Now this saves a lot of time. I won't have to pass it through the joiner to get that straight edge. What I can do is back up the sliding table, and I can run this to the edge over here, and I don't have to worry about touching the fence. Okay, I just need to get close to the blade so that I can put the board right up against the teeth there. Then I have this little jig that I made that just slides the slot here on the table, and all I have to do is line up the piece with the edge of the jig so I know where that's going to hit on the blade. This way I know that the whole board will run straight through, and then I can clamp it down over there. Okay, so I'm about to cut the 45-degree angles on this first so that I can put them at the peak at the top of the flag, have them come down and get the exact measurement that I want from end point to end point, which will be the outside points of the miters, which is the longest point. Because if I try to measure from the inside point, I'm not going to be able to get the cut with this jig against the blade. I need to have it end point to end point because I'll be able to angle this and hit the back bottom of the board and come up and have that as a long point. So I'm going to first set my digital angle gauge on the table. I'm going to zero it once it's zeroed. Alright, so now I'm going to slide it there. We're at 0. Now I can crank this to 45 because the first cut is going to be 45 degrees. That'll be for the top. The top at the point of the flag is going to be 2 45s to form that right angle. The bottom cuts are going to be 22.5, or if you subtract that from the 90, because that's the way you gotta figure the math on that one, it's 67.5 for each. That'll make a really steep miter cut. Now notice I'm not locking the jig in place yet. So now I'm going to bring it close to the saw. I want to make sure that the blade is going to cut to the point. Okay, that's locked in place. Okay, so now I have the 45s cut for the top, and they're going to come down from the top here, and I need that 67.5 degree cut here at the bottom. I've already cut those to the length that they need to be, so now I just need to hit them right at the corner. So I have this now. So we had that at 4. We need to bring this back to 22.5. Okay, now you just got to make sure when you put this in, you're cutting the angle the exact way you need to be cutting it. So this one needs to be cut this way. So it's opposite this one here. So a good way to reference is to know which way the blade's going to cut out that angle is to look at your backer board and see which way the blade is going to cut it out, and put that in there. I'm going to take my quick clamp for this, and it's only because these are larger boards, so it's just a little bit quicker and easier. That is nice. Nice steep miter right there. That is perfect. And if you haven't seen me make this jig, I have a video on it. It's the one previous to this one. Check that out and show you how I made it. Now to easily get my measurement for the bottom board, what I'm going to do is put one end that I cut 67.5 up against there. I have this clamped in place at the top with a miter spring clamp. I'm going to bring this over here, and now I'm going to grab a pencil and mark off the long point of the miter here. Make sure this is perfect. Throw a spring clamp on this too, hold it in place. I know it won't move. And I'm just going to make a mark right there. So now I need my miter to hit that point there. So what I'm going to do is first cross cut this straight at the size I need, and then when I put it in the jig, it'll automatically cut it at that point. Okay, now I have all the pieces cut, so I'm just going to take them and make a pencil mark right where I need to make the rabbet on the rear of each piece, so that I can recess the back panel. So I'm just going to take my fingernail and rest it against the back and lean the pencil forward, and this is the material that is going to have to come off. Now I know that that's going to have to go up against the fence, and then the back part will go up against the fence, and we'll cut this rabbet out the depth of the piece that we're going to put in there as the back. As far as the front, we want the glass panel to be recessed also and sit in there, and then I want a removable front. So what I'm going to do is cut 1/2 inch or 5/8. I'm going to rip off the front of this, and then what we're going to do is make a rabbet on the remaining part. We'll drop the glass panel in, and then instead of gluing the front back on, what we're going to do is tack it in place with some pin nails so that it's removable in the event that the glass breaks. Now to make that rabbet in the back and also in the front where the back panel and the glass will sit, I'm switching to a dedicated ripping blade, 1/8 inch thick full kerf blade, but it also has a flat top grind. So this is going to give me a nice even cut, and I won't get any bumps or anything in that groove or in that rabbet rather. So everything will sit nice and flush. If you use the combination blade or an alternate tooth bevel, you're going to have one blade going this way, one blade going this way, and one centered straight. And so what that does is it creates these two little ears and a hump in the middle, so you don't get a flat groove, and it could screw up the way everything sits and squares up. I've also removed the riving knife just for the fact that this is going to be a non-through cut. I ripped the pieces off from the same piece we cut. That's why I made it extra wide. So you have to make sure that you keep it lined up with the one that you cut off so that it blends back in when it gets nailed back on. These are going to essentially be two triangular frames. Okay, so now the glass is 3/32 of an inch thick, which is basically less, just slightly less than an eighth. So the blade, the thickness of the blade being full kerf 1/8 is just slightly bigger than this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the glass to the edge and I'm going to use a number 9mm pencil. And then what I'll do is, once I have this lined up perfectly with the edge, I'm just going to make a mark. And that little mark right there, being the thickness of the glass, is going to give me the height that I need to raise the blade to make this cut. So here's the blade at the highest point. Now I'm going to lower it down until that point just makes it to that line. Okay, so basically we're going to have two glue ups. We're going to have the main case glue up, and then you can see behind me here on the table saw, we're going to have the face frame glue ups. And I think I'm going to put some splines in each one of the miters to give it a mechanical fastener. Okay, so I cut the glass panel, and I'm just going to run a couple of little spots of silicone. You don't have to do this because it's really not going to rattle around and move, but I'm just doing it as a precaution. Okay, it's a nice fit. And this is where the top comes in. Place it over there just like that. And I'm going to get a pin nailer and just run a couple of small pin nails in there just to hold it in place, so that in the event we need to replace the glass, we can just take a little pry bar and pop it right off and change the glass. I just cut a 1/4 inch plywood back. That's going to fit right in there just like that. And now for flag. And this is the way it goes here. Just like that. Lay it down. Center it in there. And there you have it. Now all I need to do is get a little Windex, clean that glass.